Hello friends. So in this video we are going to continue the chapter of national income accounting. So in national income accounting we have discussed many concepts, like we have discussed the nominal national income, we have discussed the real national income, we have discussed what is the depreciation, what is gross, what is net national income. So different concepts of the chapter has been covered. In fact, in the last two videos we are focusing on the GDP calculation in India. Now I have told that for to calculate GDP in India, the NSO divides the Indian economy into three producing sectors. Like we have primary sector, we have secondary sector, we have the tertiary sector. So ఇలా మన divide చేస్తారని కూడా discuss చేసాం. And in fact, we have three methods to calculate GDP, and one method which we have discussed is referred as value added method. Now when we talk about value added method, so value added method simply refers to, like, if you sum of the gross value added by all the producing sectors, then it gives us the GDP అనేది మనం ఒక డిస్కస్ చేసాం. Then in fact we have also discussed that value added method is being used to calculate or to know the GDP contribution of primary sector along with the registered manufacturing units అని కూడా డిస్కస్ చేసాం. Then we have also discussed the concept, the second method, which is known as income method. So income method lo the sum of factor incomes which are being generated in producing final goods and services, if you sum up, then we are able to get the GDP. ఇది మనం డిస్కస్ చేసినటువంటి కాన్సెప్ట్. In fact, it is the income method which is being used to know the GDP contribution of other sectors అని కూడా డిస్కస్ చేసాం, and how we can calculate gross national product from the income method అని డిస్కస్ చేసాం. In fact, GNP can be derived from the GDP plus a net factor income from abroad, and in fact we have discussed what exactly net factor income from abroad is also. Now in this video what we are going to do is, like, we are going to discuss one important concept that is being connected with the GDP calculation. అదేంటంటే యాక్చువల్గా ఇండియాలో 2015 వరకు we have one method of calculation of GDP, and like from 2015 the GDP calculation methodology has been changed. Now that is where we are going to know the GDP calculation methodology in two different time periods. So now we are going to discuss GDP calculation methodology, and we can write it as pre 2015. Now let us understand ఎలా ఉంది 2015 ముందు. Now let us understand it with a format of like the step by step case మనం చూద్దాం. Now the first step which we has is like in calculation of GDP ఏంటంటే, so first we use value added method. Okay, now the value added method is being used to get GDP at market price for primary and రిజిస్టర్డ్ మ్యానుఫ్యాక్చరింగ్ సెక్టార్స్. సో అంటే మనం ప్రైమరీ సెక్టార్, రిజిస్టర్డ్ మ్యానుఫ్యాక్చరింగ్ యూనిట్స్ ఏదైతే ఉన్నాయో వీటికి వాల్యూ యాడెడ్ మెథడ్ మీన్స్ లైక్ ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ జీడిపి, ఇట్ ఈస్ గ్రాస్ వాల్యూ యాడెడ్ ఎట్ ఇట్ ఈస్ వి టు గెట్ ది గ్రాస్ వాల్యూ యాడెడ్ ఎట్ మార్కెట్ ప్రైస్. సో వాల్యూ యాడెడ్ మెథడ్ని మనం యూస్ చేస్తాం దేనికి? గ్రాస్ వాల్యూ యాడెడ్ విచ్ ఇస్ బీయింగ్ వాల్యూడ్ ఎట్ మార్కెట్ ప్రైస్. Now what does it mean when I say gross value added at market price? We have discussed what exactly gross value added is. Gross value added ante enti? So value of gross output of final goods and services minus value of gross output of intermediate goods and services. Now what does it mean when I say gross value added at market price? It means like when we calculate the gross output of final goods and services, its value, it is being taken from the market price. So the value of gross output of final goods and services at market price minus value of intermediate goods and services at market price. So this is the point which you has to keep in mind. సో మనము ఈ ప్రైమరీ సెక్టార్, రిజిస్టర్డ్ మ్యానుఫ్యాక్చరింగ్ యూనిట్ సంబంధించి gross value added at market price first we are going to calculate. Now the first step is being done. Now once the step 1 is being done, now we are going to move towards the step 2. Now what happens in step 2? In the step 2, So what we are going to do is like, ఇప్పుడు now we are going to calculate the gross value added at factor cost for the above sectors. Now ఇప్పుడు gross value added at market price, gross value added at factor cost. Now we have discussed that any national income at factor cost can be derived by, that is gross value added at market price minus net indirect taxes. So it means gross value added at factor cost is derived for the sectors which we have discussed, like primary and registered manufacturing units. This is step 2. So gross value added factor cost level ochindi. Now look at the step 3. Now what is step 3? In step 3 what we will do, so we use income method. So income method is being used. Now why the income method is being used? So income method is being used to get gross value added at factor cost for other sectors. Now what does it mean when I say for other sectors? We have discussed other sectors ante మనం డిస్కస్ చేసింది like the unregistered manufacturing units. We have discussed the public utilities, construction, services. So already మనం డిస్కస్ చేసాం, ఇన్కమ్ మెథడ్ మాత్రమే వీటికి వాడుతుంటాం. So gross value added at factor cost we are going to calculate for other sectors. Now how we are going to calculate gross value added at factor cost? So gross value added at factor cost, that is like, so whatever is the value addition that is being done at the production at the firm level, now this value which is in the form of money is now being given to the owner, factor owners, in the form of factor incomes. Now that is where we have discussed that income method divides the income into 3 categories for GDP calculation. Now GVA at factor cost can be written as like the compensation of employees plus operating surplus plus mixed income of self-employees plus, since we are using the term gross, hence we need to add the provision for depreciation of fixed capital. If we use the term net, we should deduct the depreciation. Since we are using the gross, hence we are adding the depreciation. So the gross value added at factor cost for the above sectors can be, by income method we can get in this form, like the sum of COE, operating surplus plus mixed income of employees. If we add, then we are going to derive the gross value added at factor cost. So this is the third method. So step 1, in the step 2 we have calculated gross value added at factor cost for the primary and registered sectors. Gross value added at factor cost is being also we have calculated for the other sectors. Now in step 4, what we will do? Now in the step 4 what we are going to do is like, now we are going to add the GVA at factor cost for all the sectors. Like we have the GVA of factor cost for primary, for registered, for unregistered, for construction, for public utilities, for services. Now the sum of gross value added at factor cost gives us the GDP at factor cost. So we have already discussed the sum of gross value added. If we add it, then automatically we are going to get the GDP. So that is where the GDP at factor cost is being derived. So ఇండియాలో 2015 వరకు GDP gross domestic product at factor cost is considered to be the official measure of national income. This is the point which we has to keep in mind. Now ఇప్పుడు 2015 వరకు ఈ మెథడాలజీ ఉంది ఇండియాలో. Now post 2015, what are those changes that have been brought in GDP calculation methodology? Now let us understand the GDP calculation methodology. Like it is not pre 2015, it can be written as like the post 2015. Now to understand the GDP calculation methodology which is like post 2015, సో మనం కొన్ని కాన్సెప్ట్స్ అర్థం చేసుకోవాల్సిన అవసరం ఉంది. సో ఆ టాపిక్ అర్థం అవ్వాలి అంటే ఏ స్టెప్స్లో మనం చేస్తామో కొన్ని కాన్సెప్ట్స్ మనం అర్థం చేసుకోవాలి. నౌ ద ఫస్ట్ కాన్సెప్ట్ విచ్ వీ హ్యావ్ గోయింగ్ టు డిస్కస్. సో దీంట్లో ఈ టాపిక్ మనం కంటిన్యూషన్ చేస్తాం ఓన్లీ ఇఫ్ యూ అండర్స్టాండ్ దీస్ కాన్సెప్ట్స్. నౌ ద ఫస్ట్ కాన్సెప్ట్ విచ్ వీఆర్ గోయింగ్ టు డిస్కస్ ఈస్ రెఫర్డ్ యాజ్ వాట్ ఆర్ ప్రొడక్షన్ ట్యాక్సెస్ ఆర్ ప్రొడక్షన్ సబ్సిడీస్. ఏంటి ప్రొడక్షన్ ట్యాక్సెస్, ప్రొడక్షన్ సబ్సిడీస్ అంటే ఏంటి? This is the concept first we are going to discuss. Production taxes or production subsidies means these are the taxes paid by the producer, or these are the subsidies received by the producer. So the production taxes which are being paid by the producer are production subsidies that are being received by the producer, and in relation to production, so production taxes are subsidies which are being paid or received by the producer in relation to the production and are independent of actual volume of production. So this is the definition which we have to understand with regards to production taxes or production subsidies. Now production taxes or production subsidies, since if it is tax, we can say it as paid. If it is subsidy, it is received by the producer. Now what does it mean in relation to the production and are independent of the actual volume of production? ఏంటి దాని మీనింగ్ ఏంటంటే, now let us take the example of production taxes. The first example which we have is referred as land revenue tax. Now land revenue tax is considered to be an example for production tax. How it means like land revenue tax ante, so ఇండియాలో కొన్ని స్టేట్స్ లో గవర్నమెంట్స్ దే యూస్ టు కలెక్ట్ ద ల్యాండ్ రెవెన్యూ ట్యాక్స్ ఇన్ మినిమల్ అమౌంట్. నౌ ఇప్పుడు ఒక ఫార్మర్ ల్యాండ్ రెవెన్యూ ట్యాక్స్ పే చేశాడు గవర్నమెంట్కి అంటే దాని మీనింగ్ ఏంటి? బికాస్ హీ ఆర్ షీ ఓన్స్ ద ల్యాండ్, అందువల్ల పే చేస్తున్నారు. ఇప్పుడు ఈ పే చేసే ప్రాసెస్లో ఖచ్చితంగా వై ద ల్యాండ్ రెవెన్యూ ట్యాక్స్ ఇస్ బీయింగ్ పెయిడ్ బై ద ఫార్మర్? బికాస్ అక్కడ ప్రొడక్షన్ ఆ ల్యాండ్ నుంచి అతను ఏదో చేస్తున్నాడు. సో వై వుడ్ ఏ ఫార్మర్ పే ఏ ల్యాండ్ రెవెన్యూ ట్యాక్స్ if he keeps the land in idle form? So that is why production taxes are paid by the producer, in the case farmer, in relation to the production. So since he is producing something, hence he is paying the tax, production tax, and these taxes are independent of actual volume of production. ఇప్పుడు ఒక ఫార్మర్ 2000-3000 రూపీస్ ల్యాండ్ రెవెన్యూ ట్యాక్స్ పే చేస్తే ఇంత క్రాప్ ప్రొడక్షన్ చేయడం వల్ల ఇంత ల్యాండ్ రెవెన్యూ ట్యాక్స్ పే చేయాలని లేదు ఎక్కడ. ఇన్ఫాక్ట్ ఇట్ బికమ్స్ డిఫికల్ట్ టు నో విచ్ క్రాప్ హీ హాస్ గ్రోన్. అతను వీట్ వేసాడా, పల్సెస్ వేసాడా, ప్యాడీ వేసాడా, అది చెప్పడం కూడా కష్టం. హౌ క్యాన్ వీ నో ద యాక్చువల్ వాల్యూమ్ ఆఫ్ ప్రొడక్షన్ విచ్ ఇస్ బీయింగ్ ప్రొడ్యూస్డ్ బై ద ఫార్మర్? సో ప్రొడక్షన్ ట్యాక్సెస్ కి బెస్ట్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ల్యాండ్ రెవెన్యూ ట్యాక్స్. దీస్ ఆర్ ద ట్యాక్సెస్ పెయిడ్ బై ద ప్రొడ్యూసర్, ఇక్కడ ఫార్మర్, అండ్ ఇన్ రిలేషన్ టు ప్రొడక్షన్ మీన్స్ లైక్ land revenue tax is being paid by the farmer since he is producing something and it is independent of the actual volume of production. ఎంత అయితే ప్రొడక్షన్ జరుగుతుందో అది సంబంధం లేదు, ఫస్ట్ పాయింట్. నౌ ద సెకండ్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ విచ్ వీ క్యాన్ టేక్ ఇట్ యాజ్ స్టాంప్ డ్యూటీ. నౌ హౌ క్యాన్ ఐ సే లైక్ స్టాంప్ డ్యూటీ is an example for production taxes? Because stamp duty అంటే ఏంటి? It is a tax which is being paid by the in the process of selling and purchasing of properties. సో ఇప్పుడు ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఇఫ్ ఐ ఆమ్ ద కార్ ఓనర్ ఆర్ కార్ మేకింగ్ కంపెనీ ఓనర్, ఇప్పుడు నేను ఒక బిల్డింగ్ పర్చేస్ చేసే ప్రాసెస్లో ఐ హ్యావ్ పెయిడ్ 10 lakhs యాజ్ స్టాంప్ డ్యూటీ, ట్యాక్స్ పే చేశా. సో వెన్ ఐ హ్యావ్ పెయిడ్ ట్యాక్స్ బీయింగ్ ద కార్ మేకింగ్ కంపెనీ ఓనర్, సో వై విల్ ఐ పే స్టాంప్ డ్యూటీ? బికాస్ ఐ హ్యావ్ పర్చేస్డ్ బిల్డింగ్. Why will I purchase building? Because to produce something which is in the form of cars. So it is being paid by the producer in relation to production, and this tax is being paid by the owner of the car making company irrespective of the amount of cars which the company produces. So pay chesta production taxes. Now let us go for production subsidies. Now what are production subsidies? Production subsidies are received by the producer. Now best example which we have is like fertilizer subsidy, which means like oka farmer ki fertilizer subsidy vachinante enti? Because by receiving such subsidy he is going to produce something, so it is received by the producer in relation to production and they are independent of the actual volume of production. So enta production మనం ఎంత చేస్తాము ఆ యూరియా వాడి అనేది మనకు సంబంధం లేదు, but they are being paid received to the producer. So this is the one concept which we have to understand with regards to the production taxes or production subsidies. Now the second point which we has to second concept which we has to understand before going to understand post 2015 GDP calculation methodology ఏంటంటే, now what are product taxes or product subsidies? ఇందాకలేమో production taxes, now it is like product subsidies. Now when I talk about product taxes or product subsidies, product taxes or product subsidies are being paid are received by the producer. So product tax are paid by the producer, product subsidies are received by the producer. They are being paid or received by the producer on unit on per unit of product, on per unit of product, and in fact, and it is dependent on the actual volume of production, or it is completely dependent on the volume of production which is happening actually. So it means like, now let us take the example of product taxes. Like we have more, all the indirect taxes are considered to be the product taxes, like GST, like excise duty, like custom duty. These are being paid by the producer on unit of product, which means like if you take the example of GST, it is being paid on per unit, like on soap, on a particular product. Take the example of excise duty. Excise duty is being paid by the manufacturer on the total value of goods that he has manufactured. If I have manufactured 20 lakhs worth of shirts, on this 20 lakhs worth of shirts, I am going to pay the excise duty. So these are being paid by the producer on unit of product, and it is dependent on the actual volume of production. So which means like irrespective of the actual volume of production, the taxes will be paid. It is being paid on the actual volume of production. So these are certain points which we have. Now we can take the example of product subsidies in the form of food subsidy. Now one food subsidy which we have is MSP, minimum support price. So government provides the product subsidies like MSP. ఇప్పుడు 100 tons of paddy పండిస్తే ఇంత, లేదా 200 tons of paddy పండిస్తే ఇంత. So MSP is being given in the form of subsidy based on the volume of production which the producer does. So these are certain points which we has to keep in mind. Now in the next video we are going to discuss one important concept, like which is like how will we value the goods and services at basic prices. So once we get that concept, then automatic ga manaki what are the changes that has been done in 2015 post 2015 GDP calculation methodology we are going to discuss. So thank you.